us live in studio is the political analyst Tshepo Kgadima. Thank you so much for joining us once again here on Morning Prime. Thank you so much for your time. Firstly, let's talk about reprioritizing the budget. What will need to go and what will need more of a focus, do you believe?
Look, the reprioritization of the budget, well, I don't think that there is really much that can be done in that space. My belief is what is needed right now is to find ways and means of increasing the tax revenue. And what this country actually is facing, which for me is more worrying, is that when you look at our total income tax breakdown, 37% comes from VAT, 32% comes from pay-as-you-earn, and only 18% comes from corporate tax. So that clearly should be an indication that there's not much efficiency in collecting tax, particularly from the corporate sector, which I hasten to add that as we speak sits with over 700 billion rand of cash that is not being invested in this economy. And then the other 6% in terms of our income tax revenue comes from customs. Again, something that is very worrying. We are an import economy that is dealing with a perennial trade deficit. Therefore, to only have 6% of our tax revenue coming from customs, that clearly should be worrying. And I'm very surprised that Cabinet has not paid particular attention to these numbers. So tax reprioritization for me is not the solution to the problems that we face in terms of not only growing the economy and growing the economy from the state perspective with more taxes. It enables the state, therefore, to be able to start to participate in a meaningful way in the economy. So I must say that I'm very worried that the approach that they are taking, and also when you take into account the fees must fall movement, that even the president is said to have called that there should be a continued zero increase in the tertiary education fees. What does that tell us? It tells us that there is this continuing pressure, and there doesn't seem to be that agency in that what are the ways and means. And I don't believe that as a country we can afford to go by the Maynard Keynes theory of deficit financing, whereby we continue to borrow money in order to finance our budget. That certainly is not the way to go. Revenue should be what this government is focused on.
Now, talking about the fees must fall movement in a little bit more detail, let's also comment about the ISA relationship between Blade Nzimande and President Zuma. The minimum requirement was 8% increase, and Nzimande proposed 6%. Otherwise, you'll face a financial crisis. And Zuma made a comment about the fact that negotiations are still in progress. And as you mentioned earlier, he has backed this 0% increase. Treasury has said that they don't know where they can find this money, and Zuma ultimately just said, find this money. Your thoughts on that? Yeah,
for the president to say, look, find the money, I support that. And where can they find the money? I believe that the way to find the money is really a drastic and systematic reform and overhaul of our tax code, which is antiquated. So clearly, that is what they should be focusing on. And the Minister of Finance, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, that's where his focus is supposed to be, ensuring that there is enabling legislation and ensuring that South African Revenue Service is equally able to collect more taxes as they can. The capacity is certainly there. But the other issue that has not been answered is whether it's 6% or 8% increase in terms of tertiary education. It doesn't really tell us much. I think what most of us would like to find out is that what is the true cost of delivering quality education? About a year ago, I made a comment that is it the problem of we got graduates, are they unemployed or unemployable? So there are much more deeper questions than just the issue of fees. And right now, I'm worried that, once again, we are just narrow focusing on an issue that is not the total answer to the questions that we need to be answering of ensuring that we can have a skilled and educated labor force that can be entering the job market, as well as the entrepreneurial space. So there are deeper questions that I think need to be answered, and the Commission needs to expand its work beyond just looking at the issue of fees. But most certainly, yes, you can't just say 6% or 8%. What informs that? What is the true cost of education? And is the current education system of being in a classroom, is it the most optimal, or are there other technological advancements that we should be actually taking advantage and using and deploying to ensure that quality tertiary education can be available to many more people at the least cost possible? And that's really what worries me, that we are not spending enough time to interrogate and think about those issues.
And now another issue that we expect to be addressed today with regards to SAA. Now there has been no agreement on the new board. Your thoughts here?
Look, I'm on record. Last week, Bloomberg quoted Mr. Christo Wiese as saying that he believes the solution for South African Airways' challenges or problems, financial, would be the partial sale. I am vehemently opposed to that idea, probably because it has been done before and it has completely failed. The issue around SAA, it needs to be taken a lot more serious than what currently has been done. I think it is highly irresponsible for Treasury to continue to delay to provide the guarantee for SAA in order for its financials to be signed off. And also for both Treasury and South African Airways not to explain in detail that the 5 billion rand that they need to show up the balance sheet is not as a direct result of operating losses, but is resultant from the mark-to-market principle, which has seen South African Airways balance sheet having larger impairments than the liabilities, which largely come from financing. Operationally, the airline continues to generate positive cash flows. It continues to meet its obligations. But it is that principle of mark-to-market in terms of accounting that unfortunately has stung not only South African Airways, but there are many other companies that we can be able to cite examples of that found themselves in that. BHP Billiton, for example, has suffered the largest loss in 15 years. And when you look at the causes of that loss that is reported by BHP Billiton, it comes largely from what? From impairments and not from operations. And the more we have this unfortunate but sinister narrative that SAA is bankrupt, I think we as a country are going to feel the effects, because South African Airways is so important to the economy of this country. It employs over 10,000 people. It spends over 25 billion rand a year in procurement. That is a direct impact that it has on the economy of this country. So to then go and be playing a game, as it would appear, with whether or not to grant it the necessary financial support that it needs, I think that is downright dangerous to the economy of this country. It is important that this airline should indeed have a full complement board, but also the minister has made utterances that he believes that South African Airways needs a completely new board with a completely new executive management. And that is irresponsible in my view, purely because you cannot do away with institutional memory. The people that are there, continuity is important. And this is not a brand new business. It needs that continued institutional memory and continuity from the board. But certainly, yes, you need to have a full complement of a board, and it needs to be supported. But also it needs to find ways and means of being a low-cost producer as are other airlines, such as Southwest Airlines in the United States, for example, which has made profit year after year since 1973. So it is possible. Or EasyJet in Europe, if you look at their operating model, they have found ways and means of being a low-cost producer at all aspects, despite the high oil prices or the volatile oil prices that affect all airlines.
Now, Mr. Kgadima, can you talk us through the main aspects of the 9-point plan that was announced at the SONA, and what exactly does this entail?
Look, the 9-point plan is a very good initiative from government. It needs to be supported by private sector. So what I'm seeing there is that there's been more talk around it than actually action. We now need to get to a point whereby we're seeing that there is tangible action in putting in place this. In terms of the 9-point plan, for example, let's look at the oceans economy, or the blue economy as they refer to it. Many times, various government ministers, government officials have lamented the fact that South Africa, even though through our major ports, we handle over 300 million tons of cargo annually, yet South Africa, until recently, never even had one flag carrier. And it has been identified that there is great opportunities in terms of employment, in terms of ensuring that there is a greater impact in our economy by ensuring that South Africa and South African businesses start to play a role in the maritime sector. But it has only remained talk. I believe that there needs to be a lot more agency of ensuring that. I'll give an example. A friend of mine, AJ Mthembu, when he was president of Santaco a number of years ago, he gave me this lesson which for me really has changed my outlook and my way of life. And I just wish that, in fact, this should be the outlook we have as a country. He was saying to me, he says, listen, Tshepo, you guys are very educated. You write feasibility reports, you write business plans and everything else. He said, we in the taxi business, we don't write a business plan, we don't write a feasibility report. When we see a shopping mall open, we send a taxi. At the end of the day, we ask the driver, how many people did you carry today? Should we be sending 2 or more taxis? And that's how we do. And then at the time, he was telling me that the taxi industry in South Africa's contribution to our GDP is 40 billion rand annually, carrying over 16.5 million people daily. That is a success. Why? Because they just went ahead and did it. And what am I saying? Even in terms of the 9-point plan, we need to go beyond just talking about it. Now, even with the National Development Plan, I hear that there is branding. We need to go beyond those things. In fact, at this juncture, what would have been more ideal and more helpful for this, for all South Africans would have been to say, what is the progress made and what are the successes on the early successes we are starting to enjoy from the National Development Plan and this 9-point plan. Since it was announced by the president at the beginning of the year, we should have been at a report back time, not still talking about it that, oh, by the way, we have this plan. And also it has been proven beyond any doubt that the so-called, the elusive rather, foreign direct investor has not eventuated. Because in South Africa, when you look at, when we talk about foreign direct investment, we talk about the foreign direct investors who are going into bonds and equities. And those don't have any impact in terms of growing the economy more than, let's say, to the extent that actually we need to have this economy be growing at the 4 to 6% as outlined in the National Development Plan. So these are very serious issues that I find that we are not paying particular attention, or there's not enough agency. For example, in 2014, the president signed off the Infrastructure Development Act, which is managed by the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Council. But very little has been done in terms of the work of the council or even under that act, because we are still seeing many projects, economic projects, being delayed from implementation because of a bureaucratic maze they have to go through instead of now using this new legislation that was promulgated. And
Mr.
we
Kgadima,
really, as a
unfortunately,
country,
we're gonna
need
have
to move
cut you
beyond
there.
that.